Snowpiercer. The snow
It's
that
a
you
train.
long to pierce. It's just a train. I'm Mikey's Abe. Welcome to Frame
That's
Rate.
it?
We rate the frames.
Yeah.
Welcome to Frame Rate, the podcast where we rate frames. It's a very special Pick the Flick episode. And as I said, I'm Michael Swain. With me here is the frame rater.
Co-rater, Abe Epperson.
Yep. And joining us is a very, very special guest.
Hi.
Please announce yourself.
Hi, I'm Dave. Dave
That's
Bell.
it. It's just Dave, you guys.
It's just Dave.
It's just
Everybody.
Dave's here.
It's just
Thank
Dave.
you. Thank you for having me. I feel very special. I'm
Oh,
loved.
you are very special. I imagined that you love this movie. Am I wrong?
You're not. You're
oh,
not.
wow.
Completely
That's even more
right.
exciting. If you're like,
I do enjoy
if you
this
have
movie.
weird qualms about the movie, that's better.
No, it's not that. I really liked it when I saw it, and then I didn't think about it for a while, and then I saw what was his after Snowpiercer. Was
That's
it Okja?
branding, ladies and gentlemen. We're in
Yeah.
your goddamn head. I think it's Okja for Netflix. When did
Yeah.
the
Yeah.
host was pre-Snowpiercer? Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes, that was 2006, I want to say,
Okay.
and this is 2013.
By the way,
And I
we're
guess-
talking about Bong Joon-ho, recent
Yeah.
recipient of the Best Film Oscar for Parasite, and I think that will be important. Or that,
Oh, for sure.
That's why it's a good time to talk about Snowpiercer.
I
'Cause
think what it
spoiler alert,
was-
my take is like, oh, I didn't realize he was doing radical class dynamic cinema the whole time.
Well, that was the thing. I thought Snowpiercer was really on the nose, and so it's really, really beautiful, and it's really good visually. But I think when I first saw it, I was like, oh, that's a bit much. And then I saw Parasite. I'm like, there it is. You didn't need a train. You just need to show
Sure.
like the world.
Having just seen Parasite, it's hard. I mean, Parasite is fucking incredible. So yeah, it's hard to stand up to that.
Yeah.
Hey, Abe, we should thank the person who finally got us to cover Snowpiercer, which I've been wanting to cover.
Carl P.
Carl P.
Carl.
Yeah, thanks, man.
We live
for-
in a goddamn nightmare scape, so we don't say your last name just in case
just in
someone
case.
would hunt you or threaten you. You never
But
know.
feel free to out yourself in any of the comments and say, it's me, Carl P.
Yeah.
Here's
Is
my
it
address.
because the
Thank
P stands for penis, and you guys are a little bashful?
Carl Penis.
Yeah, I just get a little nervous.
You don't want to say it.
Yeah, we don't want to.
No.
Some people don't want it, and sometimes we forget to ask.
Um,
So
Real quick, in case you don't know, because we're three good old buddies, so we just sort of dove in. But I'm going to blow past the synopsis because I expect most people who would listen to this show have seen it. The future is a frozen wasteland. There's a train, presumably called the Snowpiercer, although that's never explicitly said, that goes on a circuit all around the whole world, and it's built to never fail or something. I don't know. They call the engine the
just
eternal
always
engine.
keeps running.
Yeah, it's somehow self-sufficient. It's hard. I don't. Yeah. All right, we'll get into it. But just buy that. And basically, everybody else on Earth died, so the complete hierarchy of Earth is based on the ticket you bought. It's like if you checked in early on Southwest, so now you're part of the upper echelon of society because everyone died except who's on the plane. So the first class people live in the front, middle class people in the middle, and our story follows a revolution that happens from the tail of the train, makes it all the way to the engine, and a bunch of crap happens. So it's like a sci-fi apocalyptic, but I now realize, which I can't. You're right, Dave. It is so on the nose, but somehow I was very satisfied rewatching it this time because when I watched it the first time, I think it works as an action sci-fi thriller so well that I wasn't really thinking about it as a political treatise, which is shocking now when
that is.
I'm like, it so obviously is.
Yeah.
But after watching Parasite, so I had the reverse. Watching Parasite made me realize I should be thinking about shit like that while I watch this, and I actually found the rewatch very satisfying for that reason. But you're right, it's less elegant. Parasite is a guy smelling you and saying that you smell poor. Snowpiercer is a hatchet to the face.
Right. I think and again, it's hard because I don't want to talk about this movie like it's a bad movie because it's very good. We're like forced to compare it to Parasite a little bit, but I think Snowpiercer has that, like it has to be kind of a gimmick. Like he was still trying to get people's attention. So
like
it's
to sell
very,
the movie, you mean?
yeah, and to sell himself, I think.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's just one of those things I feel like young filmmakers do is they go for like the craziest premises first if they can. I think of like Nolan with Memento as opposed to Nolan Now, which I would say Memento is actually a crazier premise in terms of the structure. Like it just feels like he didn't want to just sell that idea, so he had to do some crazy train story that has a lot of like fighting, and you got Captain America in there. That helps.
That's still weird to me, and I think the Avengers, because the Avengers are now so tied into the whole like Disney, Pixar, theme park, like nostalgic. No matter how exciting it gets, it's still part of this like corporate family where everything's going to be 4-quadrant and fine. It's weird that it's Chris Evans, right?
Yeah.
And he does a good job in the scenes where he has to act. It makes you wonder like, oh, I wish he had more opportunities like this in the Avengers. But I feel like the Avengers has made everyone in the Avengers so iconic that I can't even watch their old movies now without being like, so Captain America ate a baby. All right, good to know.
Of all the things, the baby stuff is concerning. But like when he lights up a cigarette, I was like, "Oh no, Cap! The kids! Think of the kids!
Yeah.
You're a role model."
It's true.
That's my favorite sequence of that, when Chris Evans says that he knows what humans taste like and babies taste the best, and then he starts to talk about a woman and a baby and a selfless act by John Hurt.
It's really good.
But when you, if your mind is broken like mine, I have to assume that both of you guys, when he started talking about a news story about a woman and a baby, like he was going to continue to talk about how he wanted that baby. It looked so delicious.
Well, yeah, when he said babies taste the best, I was like, well, yeah, I haven't eaten a baby, but I suspect as much.
I assume it works with other animals,
Really?
I guess?
Yeah.
I don't know.
I would think, okay, it's getting grim real quick, but it's a grim
Sure.
movie.
It's grim.
I would think that like a 7 or 8-year-old would taste the best because a baby is just fat. Like, don't you want some muscle / meat on the developing body that you're going to cannibalize?
Right. Eating children is the best. You're right.
Yeah.
That's why, I mean, the witch in Hansel and Gretel, like,
boy.
yeah.
End of podcast.
No, wait, hold on.
Yeah.
Here's the thing: is that kids are I find kids gross.
Mm-hmm.
They
are.
And so, like, babies seem like a cleaner meal. And I know you wash the meat and everything. Yeah, it's more like emotionally. Maybe this is more for me.
They haven't ingested as many carcinogens yet.
Yeah.
Like, I bet
They haven't been
compared
rolling
to
around in the
animal
mud.
meat, human meat is garbage probably. Because we just eat shit and poison. You know what I
Right.
mean? Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Like, whenever a great white shark eats someone, people say, like, oh, it thinks you're a seal. And I always think of the great white shark being like, oh, gross. Oh, it's a human.
It's one of those
they're all
seals that like
bony.
went bad.
Yeah.
Back to Snowpiercer. Abe, you haven't talked enough. What do you got off the top of your noggin on Snowpiercer?
Since we're just kind of going all around it, I actually responded to what you guys were saying about like this as or Parasite as a companion piece to Snowpiercer.
Not the host.
It made me think about
Parasite and the host. Come on.
Yeah, come on. And it made me realize this viewing of it, because I hadn't seen it since I'd seen Parasite, and kind of like the ending of both films and like what I guess the message of both films are. And it made me think of something. Snowpiercer actually offers more of a negative message in one sense and more of a positive sense in another. Obviously, Snowpiercer is much bleaker and the stakes are higher, but it does end with hope. In fact, one can say that unlike Parasite, which portrays like no option or alternative, it just paints how far we've gone. This movie has a lot of consideration towards the ramifications of the upheaval and it's so purely on the side of the tail and the people that we're following, and we're so assured that Wilford, I guess, is like not a divinity. He's just a guy, and he's a piece of shit. It turns out
It's
that
like
the
a
upheaval,
cult, yeah. I
yeah,
think, is the
exactly. So it turns
depiction.
out that the upheaval is successful, and the fruits of the rebellion are catastrophic to this society. But it immediately comes in with the promise of like a new society that's more status quo to us, like people kicking around, not in trains. It's kind of like a Wall-E ending, you know?
Well, I had
what's
that.
dark.
Sorry. Okay, go ahead. Go ahead.
Well, I was just gonna say, what's dark about this though is that if it weren't for the simple truth that the Earth had recovered to the point that people can now survive outside the train, the rebellion is essentially the destruction of the human society.
Yeah.
So it's a very nuanced sci-fi and it doesn't need to be. It's could have easily been a smash 'em up, like that just results in like, yeah, the people we're rooting for won, but in this like increasingly more relevant and complex conversation about sustainability and freedom and climate change and all that, it really is like tyranny and life versus like risk and liberty. Like it's not like tyranny versus liberty, good, bad. It's like, well, yeah, good, because like if it didn't resolve that way, like if they didn't have that in their ringer, the idea that like just by looking at one plane, you know, he's able to infer that like, oh, now I can see the fuselage and stuff. So now like the snow is melting. And if that's a wild assumption about the globe, by the way.
Well, the other node was that he knew an Inuit woman who was part of the rebellion of the Seven, who told him about all the different kinds of ice. And then you see that when he's high on Chrono one time, he is able to get a very clear image of a snowflake as it goes by. I love this movie, by the way, spoiler alert, because when the train went around, it's just so fucking cool. When the train went around a curve, Dad Thug, which is what I call the blonde guy who becomes the big bad in Act 3 with no backstory or reasoning.
Right.
He looked like evil Michael McKean. Like
yeah. That's a good poll. Yeah.
Yeah.
But I also, I want to get to that later because I do wonder about, it's interesting, having a guy become the big bad who's just like, what's his motivation? He never speaks. Who is that guy? Why is he the main villain now?
He's just a zealot, just an
He
acolyte
just fucking
of the
will
train.
not stop. He's the John McClane of the evil team.
Yeah, exactly.
But I really wanted to focus on the ending because that's what Abe brought up. And I want like everyone's assessment of, I don't understand that. First of all, I think this movie goes out of its way to subvert the kind of tropes you would see in a movie like this. One we already touched on. They take the main character you've been rooting for the whole time, who represents the working class rising up in rebellion because they've been pushed too far. And they say, yeah, but in the hard times, you like killed a lady and ate her baby and all this shit. So no one gets off the hook, and it feels more like a Marxist like overview of, yeah, revolution happens. I'm not even saying
he literally
pro or
throws
anti.
his body into the gears.
Yeah,
you know?
just like revolution happens and people die on both sides. Everyone fights for their self-interest, and then the next revolution goes around. And when this happens, the working class benefits. When this happens, the rich hoard their shit, whatever. But in the end, the other subversion I love is the train fucking flies off the tracks and everyone dies. Like, that's the end. So,
Yeah.
Abe, it sounds like you have a different interpretation, so I want Dave's take, because my interpretation was this movie ends with the complete and utter end of humanity. I don't understand how. What is Yona gonna mate with Timmy?
That
And
child.
then what are the children? Is it an Adam and
And
Eve thing
that
where we
doesn't
do incest?
work.
As
Like,
I think the last shot just indicates the Bears are going to be like, oh, score, and they're
I was
going to
like,
get
is
one
the bear
decent
just
meal.
gonna eat them?
Yeah. I think
I thought that shot was supposed to show that other life finds a way kind of stuff.
Or that there's
Yeah.
already a complex ecosystem if it can support polar bears. But
Mhm.
I
I
still
think-
would argue if there aren't humans in like settlements who came out of bunkers that we didn't know about or something, I don't see how they survived much longer than
No.
the end of the movie.
No.
I think there's a chance some of the people on the train survive, but I think the point is kind of fuck it, because the
Yeah.
train's literally a cycle. It's literally just an endless cycle that has to be broken. And and Ed Harris is doing his worst job at convincing Captain America to do that. He's like just dunking on him a bunch.
Although
like
it almost works.
It almost works, but it seems like he's just kind of trying to be a dick to him as well.
I got the sense that he was like kind of a nihilist about it.
Yes,
now.
yeah,
like
he didn't seem to care.
When they hug, he goes like, "That's nice." Like his response to, "Oh, they're thwarting my plan." All the things that I was doing is
he
just
doesn't
like
try to
whatever.
stop them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like he's over it.
It's a great
like, he doesn't
delivery,
seem
by
like he
the
cares
way.
anymore.
Nice.
He's,
Yeah, which is why I thought his main motivation was just, I'm going to dunk on this guy for a while and see what happens.
Yeah.
But yeah, Chris Evans seems to be almost convinced, and then he sees the final cost of the running the engine, and it's that realization, because I don't think Chris Evans, he doesn't believe necessarily that the snow is melted, right? He
Right.
hasn't gotten that much proof.
No, he hasn't gotten that.
But to him, it's like it's this cycle and it's endless, and he's either going to be part of it or he just has to break the cycle at any cost. And so I feel like that's the idea, is that what they're doing is worse than nothing. Like
It's
if
like-
nothing is the possibility.
It's like the raid on a train meets the lighthouse, and the engine is the lighthouse.
Yeah.
I do agree with your assessment that it's way more on the nose than Parasite. And sci-fi always is, because it's boiling everything down to like, this single character is emblematic of this whole multifaceted class of people. Okay, they
Right.
interact in this way. It's like an essay, but I don't know. I still get off on
Both.
ideas like, oh, the cost of the cycle is the children. Just like how the cost of the economic revolutionary cycle will always be the future. I realize that it's not hard to make that connection, but I still get that thrill of satisfying, like, that means that.
Yeah.
That means
I think
that.
It's good allegory
Bong
work.
Joon-ho thinks this. Yeah.
I think one of my favorite links that I don't think doesn't seem to be explored as much is the pure nihilism it drives the characters to. In Parasite, spoils for Parasite, I'll try to be vague, but one of the main characters does something that he can't come back from because he's just so fed up with what he sees. One thing happen that it just, he loses it. And I feel like it's the same thing here. It's the idea that it's driving these people who are at the bottom to the point where they've just lost their mind. Like
Yeah.
it's they hit a breaking point and it doesn't really matter anymore for them. They just want it to stop.
We're just shadows of humans. We're not humans.
Yeah. And like Chris Evans has, by the time he gets to the front of the train, he's lost like pretty much all of himself for that reason.
Yeah.
Everything he believes
and all
in
of
is
his
falling
associates.
apart.
I think that's one of my
all
favorite
dead, yeah.
subversions is the percentage of times on film that someone puts a knife to someone's throat that's associated with the protagonist, so you know they love them, and goes, stop, I'll kill your fucking person you care about. The number of times they say the revolution's more important, I'm sorry, kill my friend, is so slim. Movies that scene almost never goes that way. And I had forgotten that it went that way, and I was like,
Oh, yeah.
damn, Cap.
Yeah, the
Like-
character with the knife to him, he doesn't even say like it's okay or anything like that. He looks genuinely bummed that Chris Evans
But
is
he's like got to move forward.
yeah.
And then they twist the dagger and give you the backstory about
He killed that guy's
the fact
mom.
that Edgar
Right.
is the boy that
Moral-
he was going to eat.
That he was
Moral of the
gonna
story, moral, just eat the baby. It's going to die anyway in the revolution.
Right.
That's the moral.
But
of the story.
I
Yeah.
think I think the real statement is I appreciate that Bong Joon-ho it's highly propagandistic because it's presenting an essayist like, I think this, you can tell because of this and this. So I'm not going to say it's not propagandistic, but if you know what I mean, it's well-rounded propaganda in that he doesn't glamorize the revolution. Like it struck me as truly Marxist or like Leninist in the way that scene kind of is attempting to like get across to the audience. In the revolution, there will be moments where the greater good means you let your loved one die. Like
Right.
that's part of it. Yep, got to break some eggs.
Even going back to Parasite, the family in that the family that we're with the whole time, they don't do perfect things at all. They're scamming their way, into this house because they're desperate. And it's
right.
desperation.
But
it's
you're
about
sympathetic because you're because you understand desperation.
because you know what. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And you understand what that does to you.
That's what makes this film so dark, because Parasite is pointing out a flawed system, and that's dark. But there is room for redemption of society there. Like we can still look at Parasite as a cautionary tale. The gamble of Snowpiercer, based off very little information, there is no redemption.
It's like,
it's
this is how
literally a
humanity
coin flip.
ends, bitches. You
This
fucked
is-
it up.
It's a coin flip.
I think-
that you have no power over.
This is a problem, I think, with dystopian films, and I think Snowpiercer avoids it. I think this is a good version. But I remember watching The Hunger Games and the author being like, yeah, it's a cautionary tale. And it's like, of what?
It's too
How
late
do
by
we
this
get- how
point.
How did we even get to this point? This future
Yeah,
you've created
that's-
is ridiculous.
I think that's very well said, because I think that's one of the major problems with allegorical films of these days and age, is that they are doing like terms, which is what allegories do. Like, look at what this person is wearing. Aren't they kind of like rich people with their fashion and stuff like that? That is just metaphor. That's not allegory. And so if you truly want to give a moralistic tale, you have to actually do the work of like, what's the moral conundrum? What's the question at the heart of what I'm trying to get at? Hunger Games doesn't. Hunger Games is just trying to build a very interesting metaphorical scaffolding for, fighting movies and
Let's cut the
revolution.
bullshit. Hunger Games is
Right.
trying to translate the hook from Battle Royale to American cinemas for $1 billion. Hunger
Yeah.
Games, that's
Yeah.
all it ever was. I will
Yeah.
take a stand on that. Watch
No,
Battle Royale.
I
it's
tend
better,
to
more
agree with you. That's
sophisticated.
basically what
Yeah.
I'm saying, yeah. No, you're just coming out and saying it. I like that about you.
I
You're
like
a good
you
one.
too, man.
But like, when it comes down to it, it's like, it's one of those reasons that it's always good to watch movies that ask questions, because you get dialogues like this where we all kind of agree with each other because we have similar worldviews, I'd say.
Mm-hmm.
But at the same time, we still find things to pick out and like mentally masturbate about. Anyway,
So
that's
there's
what
some
I'm in
level of
for.
nuance.
And regular masturbate about, too.
Yeah.
Yeah,
It's good that you can hold these
Snowpiercer.
newfangled mics with one hand. I'll just say that.
That is true.
Yo, go ahead.
Well, I was just gonna point out, if this is a segue, Tilda Swinton, MVP, right?
Me masturbating
always.
is always a segue to Tilda Swinton. And I
Yeah,
mean that
okay.
in a respectful, professional, metaphorical way, in that she is one of my favorite actresses, and I think she's phenomenal.
Yes.
Yes.
The part where she's begging for her life and she takes out her
Yes.
teeth was
Thank
the
you.
teeth.
I wrote it. Ugh.
Yeah, do you know? Have you looked behind the scenes? Was the teeth intention? Like, was that an improv? Because
I
obviously she's
don't
wearing
think
false
it's well
teeth for the
documented.
role.
Also,
if someone can
was
find
that an
it-
effect, or does Tilda Swinton have dentures in real life?
Oh, I assume they just because she has terrible teeth. The character, I assumed she had some sort of fake teeth on for the role.
Right.
And
Yeah,
like
and it's
in
just
the
the removal
moment,
of
she
those.
decided to pull it out. Like that's what I'm wondering if that's
Oh, an improv?
if
I think
in
that's just
improv,
a
you just
prosthetic
pull 'em
trip.
out.
It is.
Maybe they added some lines on her face, but like it's true that when she takes them away, it's a little bit more sullen.
Yeah.
And yeah, I'm glad we all responded to that moment, because if you watch this movie, I personally cannot think of a moment that I was more affected by catharsis, like in my life, because of her performance. Seconds before she's like, take off, we're like all like screaming and clamoring for like, kill her, murder her.
Right.
And then suddenly in a single move, with her cheeks sullen by like the empty space, her eyes pleading for her life, she's immediately the saddest grandma. And I can't help but feel for this like unflinching zealot that spouts ignorance
Well,
and
I don't
hatred
want
throughout the
that to
film.
be. I don't want to be lumped in with. No, I thought he should kill. I thought she got off way too easy. I still in that moment would have tortured that person. Like an example should have been
absolutely.
made of her.
I think she's
Well, because she
despicable,
represents-
but you can't deny that she gave that Curtis
Yes.
performance.
Oh, she did. She killed it.
Is like,
But sh-
that reversal makes you like, if there was ever a performance that if I was Curtis in that situation, where I'd be like, oh man, why'd you have
Right.
to do that? Because now I'm like, I
But
don't
in our
want to
simple-
kill you
but
because
she's-
of my
in our
animal
simple
monkey
mapping
She's-
of the allegory here, she represents propaganda and media and the official cover
She's
story
called-
that
I think she's-
justifies everything. And that's the thing I hate the most, because we're all storytellers here, and people who storytell for explicit evil purposes should fucking get shot, and not in the head, in the stomach, and left in the desert for several days.
Well, yeah.
She's also
Teach their
seems
own.
like oddly in control even when she's begging. Like I never feel like she actually like she always seems like a liar cuz she's
Yeah.
just like, spare me cuz I want to live. And I'll give up Ed Harris and then I'll live. And she seems even then to not lose like it seems calculated. Her pulling out her teeth and looking pathetic is so calculated from that character that it was hard for me to feel that much sympathy from her, because she always felt like, oh, the moment she gets a chance, she's going to switch back, because of course she
Which
is.
she does. Of course, yeah.
Yeah,
I
which
might
she
be
does.
late to the party. I only caught this in this viewing. She does the hand gesture at the beginning of the movie when she's talking
Yeah.
about the
Your
shoe
proper
and stuff,
position.
where it's like the
Yeah.
grab, twist, and then pull towards you, which is the gesture that the children make when they're in the engine.
Yeah, it's like
to
a weird
clean the
inside joke.
And so it means that she knows.
Oh yeah.
And that's like a adding insult to injury.
You mean she
Yeah,
knows that the
I
whole
noticed it-
society's a lie or whatever, the revolutionary
based on
the
children,
revolutions
yeah.
are planned? Yeah.
Because it's totally possible that Ed Harris could just demand kids, and everyone else is so
she
much
says,
of a like
I see what
purist
you're
of
saying.
like, oh yeah,
'Cause
whatever
she says,
you need.
I swear I don't know what he does with the kids, though I don't know, so don't
Exactly.
like take your ire out on me.
Oh yeah.
And you're saying the fact that she uses that hand gesture means she totally does know that. She just says
It's
whatever
that,
she wants.
or
Yeah.
that is
It's-
some other, just like the song that Allison Pill
part of the
and
cult.
her sing and with the
Yeah.
kids. It's such a cultist like gesture that for some reason, I don't know why that would be true. Why Wilford would be like, everyone make this hand gesture. It means something.
That tickles me.
But I won't tell you what it
Yeah.
means. I doubt it, but that's possible that she's just spouting because she's like literally the voice character.
I think it's more likely
she could just be propagandist and not understand, but I think she does.
I think it's more likely everybody's just throwing each other under the bus, because it just feels like politics, where it's like the moment they're caught, they're like, I didn't know anything. I don't
Yeah,
know what's
exactly.
going on. It was them. Everybody
And-
they catch is innocent. Everybody they
and you
catch
don't
knows
know.
nothing.
Yeah.
And that's, you don't need to.
Yeah, I like the
Like-
the scene where she does the hand gesture. This resonated with me now more than ever, because it's them preaching to them about civility because someone threw a shoe while freezing a man's arm off,
Right.
and it's perfect.
So that's what.
like
It's
that
perfect.
the civility stuff is perfect for now.
Can we talk about how much it works as an action movie if you ignore the allegorical parts? Because I want to devote some time to that, because I think it rules. Like, it does remind me of The Raid and other action movies that I'm just like, that's so tight. Everything just pays off so quickly.
Yeah,
And I think a like trademark of that genre is, like you were just referencing, every character, many of whom you never find out the name of, or the names don't matter. Side note, I love that a South Korean like screenwriter writing English names is as clunky and awkward as me trying to just pick South Korean names in a script that would pass. He's like, Curtis, Edgar, I don't know, American names. But anyway, the every character on every side, from the evil people to the good people, has traits that make them indelibly like memorable. Like that guy with one arm who I think has some kind of personality disorder or something, and yet like no one is faceless. You know what I mean? There's no such thing as a faceless henchman in this. Through no dialogue, we get this character Gray who like does parkour and uses his tattoos to communicate and is a knife throwing expert.
Everything's so
It's like
dense.
everyone has some stuff going on, and I think that's
What?
a trademark thing of a good action movie. Is like everyone has their palette of moves and
Absolutely.
shit that they do, and they're really notable. And then on the evil side, you get this weird, you slowly intuit with very little information, like, okay, the guys in the gray suits are like the Imperial Crimson Guards in Star Wars. Like they're better at fighting, I guess. It's so interesting. I think he's good at that.
You get like the bald guy who's like the assassin at the end. Like everyone has like very characteristic features.
I thought one of the most
that they all.
Go ahead, Dave.
I bet they all committed to it the moment they got on the train. Right, new place, new chance for a new personality, a new you.
Right.
What you've always wanted to do. The guy's like, I'm just not going to talk. I'm going to tattoo a bunch of shit on me. Now's the time.
I bet the big bad in the silver suit at the end, who I call Dad Thug, was like a dentist, and now he's like, I've just always wanted to kill a lot of people. Now's my chance.
Right. It's just got a high pain threshold.
In terms of the raid, I would say, and this is not a bad thing about the film, is that I don't think of this film that much as an action film, because I feel like the action was filmed in a way where it's filmed with actors who don't necessarily seem like they know how to fight. It's more, everything's more messy,
Agreed.
the fighting. And so comparing it to The Raid is tough, because The Raid has like a brilliant martial artist.
It is not a
doing
display of stunt
incredible
skill or
fight.
martial arts skill. I guess it's more of a. I guess what I'm marveling at is is just Bong Joon-ho's screenwriting skills. So it's plot payoffs. The plot payoffs are I find them very like tight and snare-like, and like he's very good at going, now this, and you're like, oh, that was so fucking cool. Like when the egg guy, who should have been played by Stephen Merchant, I would argue, says, well, a lot of stuff you think is extinct on the train actually still exists. Oh, like what? Like these? And he mows everyone down with bullets, which you've become thoroughly convinced are not going to be a factor in this movie. Payoffs like that are just amazing. You're right. But to me, it's screenwriting martial arts. It's like he knows exactly when the inflection point should hit, and he likes his setups are subtle, and then his payoffs are huge, which I really appreciate.
And he keeps things changing, like the tunnel scene and stuff, where the upper hand is constantly shifting in that fight. It's more about the tension of the characters. Because they've also established that pretty much anybody can die.
Oh yeah.
And so before watching it, second time, like, and they all will, so I don't have to care that much. But the first time around, you don't want these people to die. So it feels, I don't know, I like the messiness for that reason. They shouldn't all be really good fighters, because why would they be?
You're right. It's more, I guess I'm marveling
it's
at the number
passion
of twists
behind it.
Yeah. Like when it's just sheer maneuvering. Like when Octavia, so the idea that in your third act, you're going to introduce a henchman you've seen in passing before and make him the big bad, like suddenly he's the Terminator or the Guest, and we like can't stop this guy. And he's like a schlubby, like 39-year-old guy in a gray nondescript suit, and all he does is really want to kill you. Amazing deftness to me to just have him coldly in a medium wide shot, not in a money shot, not in a glory shot, shoot Octavia Spencer to the ground while engaged in a different fight. It's so efficient to make you be like, I want that guy dead now, like yesterday. Where's John Wick? Fuck that guy. And I just think Bong Joon-ho knows film, and he knows the audience. He knows, like, this guy has to be really hateable right now. What can I do? And he thinks of a good, effective way to do that. The other payoff that was huge for me is their actual plan. The idea that the cleverness of, like, you take barrels and you make a metal tube and you use it as a battering ram, which also blocks the gates, and then people can crawl through the tube and attack. It's just like, it's full of ingenuity and imagination, and he's amazing. I love him.
He really is.
It's it is adapted.
Okay.
Remember.
From
so
what?
I wonder how much of that, I can't remember. It might just be
like
called
a short story?
Snowpiercer. I don't know.
Sci-fi short or something?
Yeah, I saw it. A novel.
I did
or
not
short
know
story.
that.
Did the
So
story?
I don't know what where it's drawn from or what it gets from that. But yeah, he's he's so nimble. I think you were saying, Swaim, about how like the snare drum hits. Like what I think his superpower is, Bong Joon-ho's, like he is so good at disguising everything with such character and nuance. Even his plot points and even the like what people want, not just themselves, but like how they go about things, are disguised as red herrings, equal to the things that are actually going to develop as very important plot points. So you're kind of in this big mess of nothing. And then what kind of pays out is whatever, the God figure, as, the writer determines will pay out. And it makes logical structural sense, or it makes narrative sense. And he's so good at making you unsure of when those things will activate that they come off as a surprise, even though they're always there. It's just you didn't think it was, because, like, for example, I think with several times we've in this podcast we've mentioned like the Chekhov's gun thing. There's nothing more propagandist than Chekhov's gun. It is the premier thing to go, now let's see a close-up shot of a gun. Why? Because it will be important later. Plant and payoff. And because of that, his plants and his payoffs seem kind of like jerky and drastic all over the place, of like who's going to be important, who's going to do the thing. Like, look no further than the guy with the knives. I forget his name. He, like, you expect him to play a major role in murdering things. Why? Because he's the most efficient murderer we've got. And he does a handful of murders.
He reminded me of the little guy from The Simpsons, where you're like, when you look away, you know he's going to do something awesome. But I got to say, like, my heart leapt and I felt very in the moment and in the movie when he fucking saves Curtis by letting his hand get stabbed and like pushing the bone against the knife.
Yep. Oh yeah.
Everyone gets a good arc and we just started King's of King and talked about The Shining, and it's a nearly flawless movie, but we talked about how there seems to be like a spreadsheet mishap where you forgot to pay off Shelley Duvall's arc because you're secretly a misogynist, Stanley Kubrick. But Bong Joon-ho fucking knows the math of filmmaking. Everyone's arc, and they're fairly simple. He does setup, payoff, and at the most complex, setup, repeated reminder of the setup, payoff, like with the red notes. I mean, that's a real Chekhov's gun where you're like, who's writing the red notes? Obviously, that will be revealed. And as the movie gets close to the end, you're like, oh, I know who it'll be, because that would be the biggest twist. So he's guilty of that, but I think he throws so many at you that I don't notice them coming. Yeah. I'm usually surprised.
The sweatiest,
you're always entertained.
The sweatiest one for me, the one that I noticed upon first watching and felt even sweatier this time, is when they wake the guy up from the prison and he takes a cigarette and someone says, oh, cigarettes have been extinct for more than 10 years now. And it's like, they all know that, right? Nobody has to say that out loud. Why are we hearing that?
Yeah, that's...
and then they're talking about how explosive the drug is, and then they have matches. And it was like, oh, okay.
But
all those
true.
Things are going to be combined. It's not
Especially
that bad.
The latter, you're right. The former, I think, is more of just like catching us up to speed. Remember, not everyone is well versed in like apocalypse sci-fi movies where it's
most
like,
people are,
well, you got to kind of world build
point.
a little bit.
I think
and even the small things you got to take for granted. I think that's for American audiences as well.
I get that, but I think the cigarette line, the problem with that line is, even though that doesn't have to do with the matches or the drugs, it snapped my attention to paying to the exposition in the moment,
right?
And then start noticing the other ones, because I was like, that line seems kind of sweaty.
I agree. And if that bugs you,
these
think
lines
about
are
this.
Also standing out.
He says every year at New Year's, I stand at this window and look at this plane. They say that he's been in jail for several years, and we see that the jail car is that you're locked in a drawer you sleep in. Fuck is he talking about?
I assumed he meant before he was in jail, but yeah.
There's a few questions. I mean, we'll get to the big one, which is the kids. But my other favorite one is the clearly forever dance party that turns into a murder
just
chain
like,
riot near the front of the train. Near the front.
Yeah.
So, like, why is this rave like right outside of Ed Harris's
would
door?
Ed
Ed Harris likes to get
Ed
wet.
Harris put the
That's-
club car
I don't-
right out. It's the second car outside his elegant.
It's like the
they're
top.
They're like, no one ever sees him. He never comes out except when he goes clubbing.
Yeah.
Yeah,
He's
that's
a
all he
fucking
does.
maniac.
He's
when he
either
goes
in his
clubbing.
engine room with all the Murphy beds and tables and shit, or just quickly pop to the dance.
And I
party.
don't understand
That's
why
Ed
these
Harris's
people are
life for
still
17
going
years.
full club. Although some people's responses to the coronavirus makes me be like, I guess that is what people do. But
Yeah.
I don't don't they know that Tilda Swinton just got shot and all the kids were evacuated and there's revolutionaries
I think
coming?
they might not. Yeah, they might
don't-
not.
Yeah.
I think they might
seem
just
like
be having
they care
fun.
about fucking
And for my money,
anything.
that like the battle of the club kids, as I called it in my notes, is I understand functionally why it happened because it urged several other plot payoffs that needed to happen in a timely fashion.
Mm-hmm.
But at the same time, that's literally the only thing that I like would have found a way to cut out and streamline in the movie. That's where it dragged for
I would
me.
have figured something better is to be available because I understand that they already had like rich Victorians. And they had like different cars that had different hats that they wore that were like very rich people. But like that one felt out of place. And the fact that it's on the top of the food chain is hilarious to me.
I figured they needed buffers because they do like, oh, there's the where they make the food and the prisons and stuff near the back to make a separation. So like I feel like Ed Harris needed a separation and he was like, make it a party club.
Put the Chronal pit right behind my office. Where does he go to the bathroom? Does he have to be like, excuse me, Wilford, God of the universe. Yeah. Excuse me, sir, your nipple rings are hitting my shoulder. I'm going to the bathroom.
I think all those shelves come out and you can just piss in any shelf.
Yeah. Where are they all sleeping? I assume we just don't see those rooms.
Yeah.
But I'm very curious. Like, did they create the train? They're like,
actually,
shit, beds.
The only car we see with beds in it is the tail car.
Right.
They have it like best in that regard.
No, there's one that looks like more of a traditional. There's like some transition cars. There's one that has more traditional setup, kind of like when you think of like Hogwarts.
There's also
it's like one person per cabin kind of deal.
Berths.
But I assume Ed Harris, one of those, just like his table, which clearly slides out from, and it can
Murphy
be
bed
removed.
or whatever.
Like he's got a Murphy bed, I think.
But all the other goddamn people partying. There's so many people partying.
I think it's implied that there's transitions.
I think
since nothing interesting happens there.
And there's that
just
scene
for
where
the
they
sake
walk
of
through
movie.
like the freezer car full of hanging meat,
Exactly.
but then they just
Right.
immediately walk into another car where the bulk of the scene takes place. So I think they do try to show like, and we skipped some cars. Whatever plot hole you
Right.
imagine, there's a car for that we didn't show.
They didn't go through the ghastly farm car. Because there's got to be a car just full of chickens and cows and shit.
Yeah,
That's true. We've got a car full of frozen hanging animal carcasses. Where's the car of animals constantly being jerked off and inseminated and slaughtered?
Yeah. It's got to be like a Minecraft setup, right? Where it's just like cows in these small little pens.
We got an aquarium,
Yeah.
So that's just imagine that, but like a shitty ranch that is very like has to be many, many cars because it takes a lot of space to make farms.
Yeah.
And
I'm also
they don't have a lot of space on a train
kind of
car.
confused as to why they're so confident that it'll never derail. When like multiple times a year they hit huge ice flows and are like, it might derail, we'll see.
Yeah, I don't think they are. I think they just have to be confident.
They just hope.
Right?
Sure.
Because what's your other option,
They could have been actively
now-
convening and making plans and discussing, is it possible in some way to live if the trains stop? Also, that's my other thing. The train doesn't generate power by moving forward. Why does the train have to be going?
It generates... All right, the only thing it generates is water.
So couldn't the train only roll when they need water and not risk hurtling at hundreds of miles an hour constantly, blindly around the globe?
Or stop and go get supplies. Here's a thought. what about all those people who are in their fucking like the rave party? Tell them, here's a craft. It's called blacksmith. Like it's like blacksmithery, and you can go out and get iron every year. When we pass this iron ore, we can grab some iron, bring it on, smelt it, and use it to fix the fucking piece of the train that they have to put dumbass kids in.
Right.
You know, like there's
Chris
gotta be
Evans
ways to
does-
improve the plan. You don't just need to solve it with tiny. They're like, the reason they need a kid is that the part broke that like
Well,
takes out all of like the soot or
Yeah.
whatever.
The reason they need the kid
Also,
is
they
the
don't have
allegory
suits.
makes sense that way.
Yeah.
They don't have suits. We can survive in space for
Oh,
the length of amount
dude,
of oxygen we
when
can
they
bottle.
open the hole to put the guy's arm through to shatter it, the full force
7
of the
minutes.
cold is blowing through the hole for like a good 8 seconds. And I would just argue that if you can stand there in just a suit, like a blazer and a shirt, and you're not even uncomfortable, you would start questioning, is it that cold outside? Like, I'm feeling it now. That guy just shot holes in the window. I'm not dead. It's like you wonder, like,
It really seems like Chris Evans, if he had taken over, he should have taken over. Ed Harris was like, I want you to take over. And he could be like, okay, cool. First order of business, we're going to do something about the children. About the children in the engine you got running around.
Yeah,
Like, he could just make some changes.
That's true. He did.
Ed
He got
Harris-
an opportunity revolutionaries never get, which it turned out all along that the evil plutocratic billionaire wanted you to take over anyway. Like, he could have just made the society way better.
Mm-hmm.
He really could have. It wouldn't have been, it's not an impossible situation at all.
No, it's not.
It's being run by a madman. That's the issue.
You do get this a lot with a lot of sci-fis because half of the fun is the stupid fucking Hunger Games situations you got. Like that's why people love Hunger Games, because you can do a thing of just nonsense, but it looks and feels cool. In order to be to get $40 million in order to make this thing. That's all he had to really give up in terms of vision and plot holes and plot inconsistencies. I'll take a Snowpiercer every day.
You don't get the
week
textural
over,
feeling that there's a
Hunger
ton of
Games.
plot holes at the time. We're like trying to.
No, you don't.
I think what I'm realizing through this phenomenal conversation is that I didn't appreciate to what a degree Snowpiercer is a masterclass in the basics of planned payoff, which is something I appreciate very, very much. And they are basic planned payoffs, but there's so many of them. I hadn't, and Dave pointing out that the payoff, the reason you're like dopamine flows is not because the fighting's so good. I'm like, you're right. All it is screenwriting virtuosity. It's that there's so many payoffs in such quick succession. You're like, guess what? The whole society has been eating bugs this whole time. Guess what? Tilda Swinton would sell him out in a second. Guess what? They want off the train. They don't even want to get to the front. Guess what? Chris Evans ate a baby. You're like, whoa, you're coming at me with a lot real fast.
Yeah.
It's like everything about it is,
go ahead.
Oh, it's everything is, it's designed to be, I don't know, like the fact that it's a train, that it's just, we need to get from the back to the front. There's different train cars that you can be like, okay, each train car represents this scene and this scene and this scene. It's all very fundamental. Like the way it's shot, where it's like, oh yeah, every shot is, if they're going to the front of the train, they're going from left to right, or they're going away from the camera. Like that's front of the train. If they're going to back of the train, they're going towards the camera or right to left. Like it's the same with the payoffs. It just feels like he had such a very oddly basic foundation to put this all on that it works really, really well.
Did you like, Dave, the payoff of, because I understand your problem with the cigarette exposition, but I did
It's not a big problem. It's like, that line could have been written like slightly better. Like that's
Have
it.
you read Snow Crash? One of my favorite books. I've mentioned it many times.
No.
Okay. But Snow Crash is about like a futuristic pizza delivery man, hacker, ninja, or like samurai who lives in, cyberspace. It's really fucking cool. And it's cool in that way that like Doom Eternal is cool, where you're not self-conscious and you're just like, what would be fucking cool? I'm 13. What's cool? And I get a lot of that off this movie, especially when Nam points out that our hero, right before the climax, is pausing for a moment to smoke the final cigarette that will ever exist on the face of the earth. I'm like, well, that's like a superlative that I would have loved to have given any of my sci-fi protagonists that I wrote. What a cool idea. My guy's so cool, he smokes the last cigarette that will ever exist. I just think that's really neat. And I think he's good at stuff like that. At like, man, he's playful. He's playful as fuck. And if you see Bong Joon-ho's like interviews, he has a great sense of humor. And I think even though this is grisly and has no humor in it, you know what I mean. The fact that he doesn't take himself too seriously applies to the film.
That's why I was personally so surprised at Parasite, is that his movies up until Parasite have been kind of silly. Like Jake Gyllenhaal in Okja is ridiculous. And the classroom scene in this is
and
over
the host
the top.
is like, look at this quirky Malcolm in the Middle style dysfunctional family.
Yeah. It's so like you have to I mean, this one has Chris Evans slipping on a fish. We haven't talked about that
weird.
for like 15 minutes.
And they were all
slips on
dipping
a
their
fucking
axes
fish.
in fish blood for luck. Is that a thing?
I think it's like toxic damage. Like
It's
poison
like oiling
damage,
the
right?
Witcher's blade or something.
Like you really don't want to get that fish blood on
guess.
you now. Like I wouldn't want
It's a fucking axe, Dave. It's going into your face.
But if it goes into your leg and you get away, you're like, ew, what's in I got all sorts of fish
so
germs
they're
in
doing
me.
all of that, planning for the first like 4. They're wasting a fish that anyone could eat
Yeah.
for like
Tilda
8 guys
Swinton
to like
said-
have
That's
a
one
slow
sushi
They
kill.
day.
only eat sushi twice a year, and only the richest people in the train get to. They take the biggest fish you've seen in the whole movie, dip their axes in it, and throw it on the floor. What is that about?
And then Chris Evans slips and falls.
Yeah.
It's
I
glorious.
also love Precisely
It's-
74. I mean, to me, because I love sci-fi campy bullshit, this is the type of sci-fi bullshit that I understand is objectively ridiculous, that it awakens the inner child in me, and I go, that's so cool, even though it's not really. When she goes, precisely 74% of you shall be killed. And you see that they've dispatched a counter guy to walk around the battle with a counter to make sure exactly 74% of the people are dying. That's so funny to me.
Everything in balance,
It's
baby.
like, that's cool. That's good. Good writing.
Yeah, I mean, it works because it also adds to the hegemony of these people.
It reminds me of
which
Brazil.
Makes you
in
hate
some
them more.
ways, which
So
we covered recently.
yeah, exactly. It's the unthinkableness
And like
of it all.
the Trump administration is fascistic in a way that is comical. So it's not weird to me. It's now, I think, common to a lot of us that like, oh yeah, the boot that crunches down on your neck out of hate and ignorance and dooms the planet to die can also be laughably stupid at the same time.
And
yeah, it's
that's
covered
kind
in
of
fish blood.
Yeah, it's kind of the
Is
worst
that
part.
They don't even know what the fuck
Like,
they're
when
doing,
she's-
man. Yeah.
Yeah. At the beginning, when they're freezing that guy's arm, she can't get the intercom to work. And they're just so like, there's this desperation to the cultism around Ed Harris, where they're all just so
Oh,
pathetic.
the pregnant teacher is like
And,
a
like-
loathsome creature.
Oh,
Can we talk about that? Because I love that Alison Pill and Tilda Swinton are so fucking horny for that Wolford song.
yeah.
You have to remember that these people lived in a non-trained society. Chris Evans was 17.
So Tilda had
on
like
Earth
a
and
good
17 in the
22
train.
years of normal Earth life. Yeah.
They are super indoctrinated for 17 years.
This is why-
It's not like they're
I wanna-
born into
Go
this.
That's why one of
Well, I want to
Oh,
see the
sorry.
train car where the indoctrination takes place, because one superpower the system seems to have that I don't think they show any like apparatus for, I don't understand how, is like they can take Pete and put him in the room and very quickly brainwash him to the point where he's like, I just grind cockroaches, man. I gotta stay here. I can't join the revolution. This is my job. It's fine. I like the taste of cockroaches. And then they get to the front of the train, and that kid, the movie's basically in real time. So that kid, Andy, that we saw was taken about 8 hours ago, that's being generous, is so brainwashed that Chris Evans is going, what are you doing, kid? I knocked him out. The revolution. You don't have to do the shitty job. And he just silently gets in a giant bullet and like loads himself into the engine. You're like, what are they doing in 8 hours that completely breaks these kids' spirits? It's impressive.
That feels like a deleted. Yeah, it feels like a deleted scene because it's so noticeable that
it's gotta be.
I want to know what the fuck they're doing.
Chrono?
Yeah,
right.
I wonder what like the equivalent of college is, because there's got to be like rebellion stages. People are like, this train bullshit.
Train, Dad.
And like, yeah, yeah,
and like it's easy to indoctrinate kids like they show in the school car, but like there's a lot of people who still are hanging on to the old days after 17 years who are like, nah, you can't run a society like that. I'm gonna stop you. And they're going to infect other people with their ideas. You can kill as many of them as you want, but if you need to keep 74%, or whatever it is, like they're going to squeak by. You're still going to get revolutionaries.
Well,
it's
and that's the big twist, right?
So
is that they want revolutions are baked into the system because they need population calls.
Right.
So that does make sense.
Yeah, it's Neo.
Well, but it's like the idea that you can control a revolution.
Oh, that's
so
true.
ridiculous.
No, that Ed Harris is like calmly eating his steak, being like, and it was so entertaining how your revolution got wildly out of hand to the point where you could kill me now if you decided to. This is all well in hand. And you're like, but he could kill you right now. Exactly. This wasn't your plan.
There was like 90% of that unexpected, but that 10%, I had it all up in here, baby. It's like, well, did you?
I think this is ultimately one of the problems with dystopian films. Or one of the things they have to get by is the reason I think Parasite works better is because Parasite doesn't have to explain anything. It's essentially a dystopian film. It's our society, and we understand
those facets are dystopian.
How things are the way they are. We don't have to ask all these questions like, how does this work? How do people think this way? That's I've been waiting for the new season of Handmaid's Tale, and that does a great job with it, because I think that a lot of dystopian plots kind of need like 5 seasons to really, because what Handmaid's Tale does, they do an episode where they show like, oh yeah, these oppressive people in the society, here's where they were before this happened and how they got there. Here's how we slowly here's how society looked like our society and then slowly became this other society. And it's way more fascinating that way.
So like
explore.
When they connect the dots, you're like, oh, okay, I could see how that could happen. But you're right, there's an aspect of when it's just presented to you. You're like, in this society, everyone believes everyone under the age of 8 has to walk on their hands at all times. You're like, why though? But why?
Yeah, exactly. Like, how did we get to this?
Yeah, how do we get there?
Like, I remember the Hunger Games, the first one, I think when they do the lottery and there's all the poor people from the bad districts watching and their kid gets taken away, they're all like pissed and they hate it. And I'm like, well, if they don't like it, why has this been
Especially
happening
when
for so
their
long?
argument is they're like
that's
this
so
keeps
weird.
Everyone happy and pacified. You're like, everyone seems pretty pissed about it.
Like,
I don't know.
Yeah, how did it get to this? Why are they letting their kids go on this like weird train? Like, wouldn't it just every time they try to do this, it'd be a riot? But everybody's just like, damn.
I think Hunger Games is near the top of the list
I hate
for not doing due diligence there. Like the Hunger Games Society, there's almost no conceivable way to connect how it got there from where we are.
Right. And you sort of need something like Snowpiercer. How it's easier to accept is they're like, okay, the world died, and now we're on a train, and you're like, okay, I can see how anything's possible.
And I can see how
you sort of need like some
and I
huge
can see
event
how the people
like
at the front of the train who happen to be near where the food and heat are would be very welcoming of the idea that, hey, we should all join a cult that codifies that the people with first class tickets are superior and their resources will always be better than the people at the back, I'd be like, I mean, if we're stuck on this train, then yeah, sure, I'm down. Yeah.
Yeah. And I can see how when the people on the back were let in for free, how they can hold that over them, like their existence.
The
is
cult
a
is
privilege
viable. Yeah.
when it's just
Given the severe circumstances. But
yeah.
Right. They didn't get tickets. They were just hang on. Like they were. I don't know how she says it. Tilda Swinton says it at one point. She says like, "You guys, we just took you in because like you're."
it's like everyone was
wanted to save
dying and
as
the
many
people were
people as we
banging on the
could.
doors, and he let some people in the last car, and now they owe their whole
Right.
descendancy to him because of that.
Right.
Yeah.
So it's indentured servitude. Yeah, it's you can see how I like that they also like the biggest explanation of it and how it was in the exposition scene with Chris Evans, but it's done with a short story that takes things for granted yet again. It's not just here's brass tacks. This is what happened. This is what happens, which is sometimes what we do with our exposition scenes. Like that's a delightful exposition scene because it's just another person telling someone a relevant story, but in it is peppered in things like, oh, it had gotten that far before the train where people were eating people. Oh, okay. And then you can infer the leaps. You know, it's like there's always going to be missing links, but it's just like you have to draw enough that we get a increased resolution of like that all scans. And so I don't ask questions about it. That's a good that's a good representation of a story. When you do that, people don't think about the problems you have in your
Don't
movie.
ask questions. Know your place. Be the shoe. Be a shoe. It's
the
even
shoe.
funnier as it's know your place.
It's
Keep
a
your
shoe,
place.
yeah.
Be a shoe.
Oh, I love that she has to
I'm a
explain.
hat. A
A
shoe goes on the foot.
on the foot. A hat goes on the head.
She's not wrong.
She's not wrong. She's just very
Yeah.
insulting.
Yeah.
She's
All right. Final thoughts.
Yeah, I just-
final thoughts.
One
time.
more shout out to Koa Sung who played Yona. That first, did you guys catch when they get to like the first rich person train after the school? It's like that Victorian tea party or what everyone's having. There's two women who are at the top of the stairs who are absolutely horrified of her, and
Yes.
she just immediately walks up and just starts touching them.
Yeah,
and, like having a great time.
loving on how they're dressed and stuff.
Yeah, and stuff like that. It reminds me of like the Jack Nicholson Joker art
Mm-hmm.
exhibition scene in Batman, where it's like super irreverent. Because in this, we're on her side. In Batman, we know
We're
that we
he's
made Delight
he's making
Joker-
people feel dangerous at a regimented event. Oh no! Yeah.
right.
Yeah.
He's tearing down the stuffy high art people, but we knew that he was always on the dark side. He's a villain. We have no doubt in this movie that she's on the right side, quote unquote, which just shows how malleable things are. Like, depending on our outlook in stories, someone can essentially do the same action of like, yeah, but fuck those people.
Someone
That's
can
all you
eat a
have to really
baby and
do
you're like,
in
but
order
I
to make-
understand. I forgive him. It depends on your alignment and what you've been
Exactly.
told about
It's
that
so-
character. Yeah.
That's why I do love the moralistic aspect of this movie about how, we were talking about earlier about Parasite pointing out a flawed system as opposed to this having a solution at the end. It's so fickle,
And I like that.
and it's based off just
It would
our
have been much
impulses as a
weaker if
viewer,
like
you know.
Nam and Yona weren't drug addicts also, or if Chris Evans had always been a good guy and everything was always like fine with him. It's stronger the other way. It's stronger in the
Right.
way where you point out that morality
Exactly.
is very much in flux at all times.
Yeah. And you can have a thing that is very good, but also look like a thing that is very bad, and it can have aspects of both. And so you're kind of choosing between things that are bad and good, as opposed to this is clearly the better thing.
Sometimes you got to eat a baby.
Hey,
None of us
similar
are above it.
tone. Vote Biden if you have to, people. Sometimes you got to eat a baby.
Sometimes
Yeah.
you have to eat a baby.
We all
Yeah.
got to buckle down sometimes.
Biden.
Leave it to-
2020.
That's why I wanted to make sure Dave was on this podcast, because I knew at some point he was going to say the words.
Mhm.
Sometimes you have to eat a baby.
Yeah.
That makes it what? That's,
know,
I think,
That was
Well,
my
if this movie
that
tells
was
us
my big
anything.
plan. You see, I'm much
it's like 89
Wolf
public
Force.
appearances in a row where
Mhm.
you've said that. The streak continues.
I know. It's
Look,
like
I'm not
constant.
saying go out and eat a baby right now. I'm just
Oh,
saying
what are
that
you saying?
sometimes you got to
got
eat a baby.
You have to. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, that's a good
It is.
time to wrap this up, right?
It's so
Does anyone have anything else that they
just
want to
thank
add?
you, Carl P. and
Does
Snowpiercer. I thought I'd think of funnier lyrics.
pluggables?
Yeah, Dave, please plug your shit.
I have a podcast network with Tom Ryman. You all know about it. It's called Gamefully Unemployed. Go to patreon.com/gamefully unemployed and you can see stuff that we do.
Can't say
Oh,
enough
oh.
high praise about that.
Oh, can I never plug my Twitter @MovieHooligan. You might as well follow me.
Very funny dude. Very funny dude. I encourage people to check out those podcasts. You'll
And
fall
eat
in love with
babies.
them. They're very, very funny.
Thank
Eat
you.
a
Thank you.
All right.
baby. Bye, everyone.
Mm,
Eat a baby.
Eat
That's
babes
frame
every
rate.
day.
Bye.